Hey, welcome to the We're Better Together podcast. I'm Ian Stevenson.
And I'm Daniel Arduña. We come from different backgrounds, but we're working together. So our goal is to help you navigate being better together in the various sectors of your life by bringing you a once-a-month interview and some stimulating thoughts on the weeks in between.
We hope this podcast keeps you tracking on building something better together, whether it's your marriage, your family, your workplace. We want to serve you. So here's today's episode. Oh man, I'm so excited for what we're gonna get to talk about today, Daniel. We've got my daughter and her husband with us today, and they've started an organization called Legacy Makers, and they're really working hard to try to help families figure out what their legacy is going to be, and basically trying to help get families to work together. So it's my privilege to introduce to you and to our audience today my daughter Megan and her husband Ben Glassman.
Hello.
How's it going? Thank you so much, Ian. Thanks for having us.
Oh man, we're so glad to have you guys here. So Daniel, I'm gonna let you kick it off. Like, what do you want to know about from these guys?
Absolutely. I mean, well, we got family in the house, so I know that you know a whole lot about them. But even for myself and our listeners, Ben and Megan, could you just tell us real quickly a little bit about yourselves and then a little bit about Legacy Makers as we start to step into some dialogue and conversation?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, about us, Megan and I, we've got 4 kids, 5 and under, and we've been married just over 6 years, coming up on 7 this year.
Great.
And yeah, so it's been awesome. A lot of learnings, a lot of growth. But we love each other. We love our family. And we met each other actually in Arkansas, of all places, and kind of fell in love then. And then I made the trek out to California, and we got married, and the rest is history. So yeah, you want to share a little bit about Legacy Makers?
Yeah. So at some point in our marriage, near the beginning, we had just had our first daughter, and things were just really, really busy for us. Ben was working a full-time job, and he was also remodeling apartments, and I had started a handmade business and, adjusting to parenthood. There was just so much going on, and we found ourselves on very different pages, or just not not in a cohesive unit, and just drained and tired all the time. And so we just realized there was, something we had to do and to change the trajectory of what we were doing as a family in order to, get to the place that we wanted to be as a family. And so we kind of just came up with this process we did on a few date nights together, and really figured out what we wanted to value as a family and what our family mission was. And then over the next several years, we realized, and upon reflection, that, those things that we said we wanted to do, they were actually happening. And having done that process, totally impacted our family. And so then we just started talking about how helpful this would be for other families to do that. And through a series of events, God doing some cool things and confirming things for us, we decided to, do our own nonprofit and start helping families with that same process. And so we started Legacy Makers, which is all about helping families have unity and purpose and leave a legacy that they're proud to pass on, and just creating multi-generational impact through your family.
Yeah, the other thing that's cool about it is, well, what Meg does is she took our little process and the questions that we talked about with each other, and then she designed a family crest that kind of encapsulated the whole experience for us into this nice visual representation.
Like a family logo, kind of.
Yeah, like a family logo. And then that was man, that'd be so cool to, share this with other families, and then make crests for them, and see what they come up with for their family, and the kind of legacy that they're wanting to leave and build.
So it's kind of cool because this kind of grew out of a grassroots thing, like what you were doing for yourselves, you wanted to help do for others.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you created your mission, you developed the crust, you've been rallying your family around that, and now you've been doing that for other families. How many families have you been doing this with?
So we've done it with almost 50 families now. So almost.
Under 50.
Yeah, and yeah, it's been such a cool experience, and the stories that we've heard, and just the opportunity to be a part of the questions that they've asked, and the questions that is kind of included in the process, and then helping them kind of walk down this path of like taking all of their life, but then like getting intentional and applying like a focus and like clarity, really like a deep clarity in all that they do,
what they want their family to be about.
Yeah, and then what they're going to do about it. How they're going to start living it out.
Yeah, so the name of our podcast, as you guys know, is We're Better Together. And you guys are really about trying to get families to work better together. Is that the crux of what you're doing, right?
Yeah. I think when you think about getting better together, if the family, I think, because the family is such a foundational component to our society and just our world, and it's like we want families to work together and to be unified, because we know that that's going to multiply and kind of ripple out into all of their lives. It's like that's kind of the origin of unity.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you don't, that's such a great point, Ben, because I think for many people, if they don't come from a family where they've learned how to be a good family and work together as a family, it makes it harder to even work together at a work setting or a team setting or a church setting, because you carry some of that kind of dysfunction with you, right? So really trying to go against the stream of maybe even what you were raised in your family to create a family where it's working better together. That's such to your point, it's foundational to this whole idea of we're better together, isn't it?
Yeah, and family's really the place where you're supposed to learn all those interpersonal dynamics. You're supposed to learn conflict resolution. You're supposed to work how to encourage each other. That's what it's meant to be, the place where you learn that. So if we're not learning that somewhere else, you're right. Like, you're not going to be able to function in those skills in other places.
Yeah, and if we're not learning that, as we're growing up in our families as kids, it's going to be a lot harder to teach ourselves that as adults. If we never really have that.
Absolutely. You hear a lot of you talking about growth and working through things. What are some of the challenges that you see as you have been working with families in this sense of trying to get better and working better together? Yeah. What are some of the challenges that you run into?
I think the biggest one is, I think so often families are just doing their own thing. Everyone has their own job, their own hobbies, their own interests, their own TV shows they like. Everyone's just on their own page. And so I think the greatest challenge for families is actually taking the time and having the intention to talk about, what are our strengths? What are we good at? What are the things you're good at that I'm not? What are the things that we all collectively love to do? What are the ways we want to make a difference? Asking ourselves those questions and setting aside the time to do that is, I think, the biggest challenge families have. And then knowing what questions to even ask themselves in order to work through the consistent tension points in their family. There's the things that families keep butting up against, and they have to know how to get past those things or how to work through them. A lot of times, it takes someone like a counselor or just something like what we do that brings them outside of those points that keep coming up.
Yeah, and I think having, if you don't have a central point or a vision in a sense for your family, something to kind of come back to, like a guidepost, flag marker, a stake in the ground. Those are the things that, if you don't have that's just it's going to cause problems, and it's going to make it harder for your family.
Absolutely. You know, Megan, you said something. I mean, even 3 minutes in, I was already like, there's something big that you said that I think helps us keep moving forward. You talked about you and Ben getting to a point where it was, you know, you're kind of driving down the road in your marriage, but then maybe realized that you weren't on the road that you wanted to be on.
Mm-hmm.
But each of you got there individually. Like, how did you get to that point? How quick were you able to get on the same page to say we want to change this? And then what did you learn in trying to overcome that you can then help these other families to overcome exactly what you just walked through in the challenges?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it definitely takes buy-in from everyone. And I think I think for us, I definitely noticed, I think with most things, I noticed the dissonance before Ben does.
Yeah.
And I think I'm just a little bit more aware of like the health versus unhealth of a situation or of what's going on. So I know for us, it was me noticing it and then me praying and me praying that he would see it too. And I think it's probably true for most families. I know it's true for us that if like the man is not bought in to affecting change, or if he's not the one that's like owning it and taking charge, then it's an uphill battle or it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, I think for me, I've learned that if I notice those things, I just have to start praying, praying that God would point it out to him. And I think in that situation, Ben, over time, it was like the exhaustion and the just feeling like, he had nothing to give and no focus, like so distracted all the time, that really helped him see that something needed to change.
Yeah, something needed to change.
God
Yeah, I remember
there
there were some moments when we were part of a church, and there we were kind of, I was inspired. I think it was just kind of the timing of everything, where I was inspired to really evaluate like just future vision and like, what are we doing and why are we doing it? And just some of those questions that were kind of coming up
for the church.
Yeah, for the church, and then conversations at the church just caused me to like and ask those same questions to myself. And from through her prayer and encouragement and support, and that time, it was like coming to the realization that like the way we're living, it's only going to work so long before something's going to break or we're going to bust at the seams. And nowadays I just say, we would have ended up creating a legacy that we wouldn't have been proud of, I think. And really, happy to be a part of.
So so if you're working with a couple and they're trying to figure out what their legacy is going to be, they're trying to map out, this intentional legacy they're going to leave. But let's say the guy is not that engaged, or maybe the wife's not that engaged. Like, don't care that much about working together. How are you guys going about shifting that? Like, how do you help them get engaged? Like, what are you doing to help get them in the game of working together in this process? Have you found some things that are helpful?
Yeah. Something that I would say to that is encouraging them on like, hey, you know what, I think reminding them that, family is so critical. And it's like, we have to constantly be these kind of vision casters for their own family, just for their own family, and say, you know what, you're going to leave a legacy, and it's either going to be good or it's going to be bad. And I think having that as an aim, or like an idea, like, hey, this is what we're shooting for together. We're here to help you. But reminding them that, like, their kids are watching you. Their kids, they're not going to do everything that you say, but they're going to do everything that you do. And having those little kind of like tidbits of vision, and like reminding them that like, this is important. Like, we have to stay engaged. And then even if there's moments, I think that when, maybe it doesn't end up the way that we had, we planned on it happening, or these conversations, maybe they go a little bit sideways, then we always follow up, and we're always checking in on each family that we, have an opportunity with.
Yeah.
Calling them, checking in on them,
Yeah, we've got a mantra we use here on our podcast. We actually did a 10-minute deal on it called, and we talk about focus, adjust, persevere. And that's exactly what I'm hearing you say, Ben. Like, you bring them back to the focus of how important a family is. You help them see they have to adjust along the way, and then you help them persevere through the way you're following up with them on your calls. It kind of keeps them in the cycle of focus, adjust, persevere. So that's so cool to hear. Like, that's one of the things I love about doing these interviews, because there's these common themes, no matter where you're working on trying to work better together, that it just exists, right? So that's so cool to hear.
Yeah.
Really awesome. Yeah.
It's been cool.
So I got another question for you, though. As a couple with 4 kids from ages 1 to 5 yourselves, how are you doing these days at walking out this whole idea of working together as a family unit? I mean, how do you get a 1-year-old and a 2-year? Like, how are you guys doing at this?
It's a good question. I think for us, like, there's always going to be seasons. It's always adjusting, and there's always going to be seasons where you're better at it than others. And I think, one, you just have to have grace for the seasons that are chaotic and the seasons that it's hard, but not let that discourage you from stepping back into it. And I think that's what we saw. So our 4th child is actually, we're fostering and hope to adopt, but so we got him in June, and that was also the same month that we started Legacy Makers and Ben left his job. So it was a really crazy season, and like a lot of adjusting, a lot of changes. And so, in any season that we've had like that, anytime we've had a new baby or job changes, anything like that, we have seen that our intentionality drops and our unity drops too. Like, we're just trying to survive, and you're trying to get to the new normal. And so I think whenever that happens, then we just have to have the grace for it, and then we have to jump back in. And something that we do a lot is we have a calendar in our house that we keep, and then we also have like the hard copy in the house, and then we have like digital ones too. But we're very adamant and intentional about pulling out our calendar regularly. And like at the beginning of every month, when we erase our old one and start our new one, we have a conversation about it. And we talk about what we want to do that month. If there's we're big on traditions. So if any traditions are coming up, put them on the calendar, or we plan when they're going to happen.
Wait a minute. So you're doing this with 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, and 5-year-old.
Okay, not the calendar thing. That's just for us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we do the planning and tell the kids what we're doing.
Okay, gotcha. I was just checking.
They're super into it too. They actually have their own calendar now, because they saw us talk about it so much and interact with it that they wanted their own. So we put some of the family things on theirs, but also their own things on there that they want to remember and be mindful of.
Yeah, but there's practical things that we do also as a family. We do like a monthly teaching night. Our traditions are French fries on Fifth Fridays. French fries on Fifth Fridays. There we go. But I think for us, it's like, it starts with us, right? Our family culture starts with Megan and I.
Yeah.
And we've just really been, I think, you use the word perseverant, but I would just, determined and diligent, I think, in kind of building in moments of evaluation and just checking in and like, thinking about, like, talking about how are we doing? Where do we feel like we need to, adjust or modify? What are our hopes for the next month or next, however long? What's our plan? And then just being really diligent about making sure we never miss those, or if we do, coming back the next day or the next week and talking about it. Always keeping that line of communication open, and then obviously it transcends, I think, to kids too.
This is so good. This is so good. I want our viewers, our listeners to grasp something that you just said there too, because Ben and Megan, you were talking earlier about kids don't just hear what you have to say. They watch everything that you do. And you just said that in your calendaring, it's not that you started by doing all of that, even with the youngest ones, but you said they observe you having these conversations about the calendar and the traditions and this, and now they want to have their own calendar as well. Man, if you listen to this, don't miss the beauty of what's happening in that moment, and the intentionality that you're doing. And I think something that I gather from the two of you, even just meeting you in this conversation, is that I sense you have a heart for wanting to help people not make mistakes that you made, or just set them up better because of the things that you've experienced. But I also sense in you that you two don't feel like you have it all figured out. You're continuing to grow yourself. And so within that, just a few questions of application or things that our viewers or listeners can hear from you. First, I want to say, even though you figured some of these things out as you were having kids, what would you say to any viewers or listeners that don't have children yet? What is something that they can even start doing now to prepare themselves for that legacy that they would want to have, even for their own kids or other people that they invest in? But what could they be doing in their marriage and relationship now?
Yeah, that's great. We actually love working with people that don't necessarily have kids yet or have only just little ones, because you have the opportunity to create your family culture and like what you want your family to be about from the beginning that your kids get to come into. So, I mean, I would encourage people to just start dreaming together, like talk about your strengths as individuals and how they work together. You know, God knew the family that he would bring together in the two of you, and he knew the kids that he was going to give you. And so there's a purpose for you two being together. And so figuring out what you're both good at individually so that you can work better together, I think is key. And then, I think it's never too early to start dreaming of things you hope to do one day as a family. And when we first did this, we had lists of things we wanted to do, like the teaching night you talked about. That was on there before our kids could even sit and listen for anything, or teaching them how to, surf, or teaching them how to rock climb, or doing like prayer nights together, or, we had all these lists of things we wanted to do. And I think dreaming about that before, and then when the kids are finally old enough, you've been anticipating it for so long that it makes it so much easier to apply those things in your life, because you've already spent all this time thinking about how to make it happen once you do have kids.
Grab a hold of that, people. Ben, what about for you? What's maybe one thing that sticks out to you that you could share with everyone to help people work better together in marriage, family, working as a team, or as a community for the various sectors that our listeners walk in?
I would say, I think a lot of, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the root of it comes back to like two things. I would say A is humility. Like I have to be humble enough to accept the fact that I don't have it all figured out, and be willing to receive feedback, from my wife. I'm like, how am I doing? How can we do this better? And I think that just takes humility, putting yourself in a place, and asking questions. Would be the other thing I would say, which kind of ties into humility. It's like, if you're humble and you want to learn, and you know what you want to grow, then you're going to ask questions, and you're going to seek out understanding. You're going to try and learn. And I would say that is just, that's the other thing, is just asking good questions and like trying to find moments of the times where you feel like you want to ask a question, like, how are we doing? Like, how can we do this better? How can I serve you? How can I serve my family? How can I be a better dad or husband? But I think it just boils down to humility, and then like questions, finding space for those things.
Wow. We ask everyone we interview at the end, we ask them that question, Ben, like, what's the one thing you'd want to make sure everyone knows if they're going to work towards more unity and more working better together in their setting. And you're the first one who I think has said humility.
Wow.
But what a key ingredient, people. Like, we got to have humility. If you're going to work better together, you got to have humility. So Ben, thank you for that nugget, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's tough.
Tell us, it is hard. Humility is a hard thing.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Tell us how can people get a hold of you if they wanted to get involved with Legacy Makers, if they wanted to really start this journey towards leaving a legacy with their family? How do they get a hold of you guys? Do you have a website? To tell us whatever you want to tell us about your deal. And I'm gonna fly your email addresses across the bottom here for anyone who wants to pick it up on the screen.
I would love to talk to anyone who's interested in what it looks like to get intentional and to build a family legacy that they're proud to pass on. You can email us, go to our website, which is chooseourlegacy.com, and there's a lot of information on there. We love walking people and families through this process called legacy mapping. And then, we have resources, we do family field guides. But the best way is just, through the website or email.
Or on social media too. Our on Instagram, it's Legacy Maker Families. And then Facebook's just Legacy Makers.
Yeah.
So there's like our hope with our social media presence is that it would just be an encouragement to families. So
yeah,
you can follow along if you want some inspiring hope for your family.
Awesome. Well, we're so grateful that you guys took time to join with us.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and we're going to let you guys go now, and then Daniel and I are going to talk to our audience for a minute. Got a couple things here at the end we want to give to them, but thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
God bless you and your work, and may he use you to encourage families all over the place about how to leave a legacy.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Oh, Daniel, that was good stuff, huh?
So good.
Oh,
so
man.
Good.
So what were some nuggets you kind of pulled out of that?
Yeah, I think some of the things that came to mind to ask about, just a few things that stood out, that sense of the identification. They were able to identify, here's where there are some issues, and then get on board together. Now let's go change that. And then I think at the end, I'm with you, that the humility piece and the asking questions, being humble enough to receive words from somebody else that may want to point out how things are going in your life or direction. And then how that might lead to asking good questions to help you to change and grow. I think those are things that definitely stood out to me.
Yeah, I heard a couple really cool things in there too. I remember Megan talked about prayer at the beginning, how when they sensed the lack of unity, how prayer was so important, and there is kind of this whole spiritual side to unity, to working together. So I heard that part. I heard, the humility, of course, that Ben mentioned at the end, I think was big for our audience to really grab a hold of that. So, as everyone's listening, we want these podcasts to help you get better at working together in your setting.
Yes.
So maybe you need to pray more. Maybe you need to be a little more humble. Maybe you need to identify, that focus thing you're working together on, so we hope this interview has been an encouragement to you. And we're really grateful that you chose to listen today.
Absolutely. And then we just want to remind you, we will be dropping content every Monday. You can look on one of those Mondays each month being an interview like today, and on the rest of those Mondays, some kind of short encouragement for you in your life as you continue to walk out being better together. And so we have that plan for you. And then Ian, you got anything you want to just close them out with?
No, I just want to encourage everyone, man, keep working to be better together in whatever sector you're working in, whether it's in your job, whether it's at your church, with your family, in your marriage. It's worth it. Work better together and figure out how to keep growing in that endeavor. And we hope that this podcast can continue to encourage you along that journey. And Daniel, great doing this with you, man. Thanks for your time today too, bro. And We'll look forward to our next 10-minute deal coming up at the beginning of, I think this one is going to air at the beginning of March. So our next ones will be the beginning of April. So keep tuning into our 10 minutes and look forward to our next interview. They're going to be great. All right. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in today. If there's anything you heard today that was helpful to you, that you think might be helpful to somebody else,
please like, subscribe, and share this podcast so we can help others be better together as well.